ഗണേശ പഞ്ചരത്ന സ്തോത്രം. മുദാകരാതമോദകം സദാ വിമുക്തി സാധകം കലാധരാവതംസകം വിലാസി ലോകരക്ഷകം അനായകൈകനായകം വിനാശിതേ ഭദൈത്യകം നതാശുഭാശു നാശകം നമാമി തം വിനായകം. നതേ തരാതി ഭീകരം നവേദിതാർക്കഭാസ്വരം നമത്സുരാരി നിർജരം നദാതി കാപദുദ്ധരം. സുരേശ്വരം നിധീശ്വരം ഗജേശ്വരം ഗണേശ്വരം മഹേശ്വരം തമാശ്രയേ പരാത്പരം നിരന്തരം. സമസ്തലോകശങ്കരം നിരസ്തദൈത്യകുഞ്ചരം ദരേതരോദരം വരം വരേ ഭവക്രമക്ഷരം. കൃപാകരം ക്ഷമാകരം മുദാകരം യശസ്കരം മനസ്കരം നമസ്കൃതം നമസ്കരോമി ഭാസ്വരം. അകിഞ്ചനാർത്തിമാർജനം ചിരന്തനോക്തിഭാജനം പുരാരി പൂർവനന്ദനം സുരാരി ഗർഭചർവണം. പ്രപഞ്ചനാശഭീഷണം ധനഞ്ജയാദിഭിഭൂഷണം കപോലദാനവാരണം ഭജേ പുരാണവാരണം. നിതാന്തകാന്തദന്തകാന്തി മന്ദകാന്തകാത്മജം അചിന്യരൂപമന്ദഹീനമന്തരായ കൃന്തനം. ഹൃദന്തരേ നിരന്തരം വസന്തമേവ യോഗിനാം തമേകദന്തമേവ തം വിചിന്യയാമി സന്തതം. മഹാഗണേശ പഞ്ചരത്നമാദരേണ യോന്വഹം പ്രജൽപതി പ്രഭാതകേ ഹൃദി സ്മരൻ ഗണേശ്വരം. അരോഗതാമദോഷതാം സുസാഹിതീം സുപുത്രതാം സമാഹിതായുരഷ്ടഭൂതിമഭ്യുപൈതി സോചിരാ. സമാഹിതായുരഷ്ടഭൂതിമഭ്യുപൈതി സോചിരാ. മൂകം കരോതി വാചാലം ലംഘയതേ ഗിരിം യത്കൃപാതമഹം വന്ദേ പരമാനന്ദമാധവം. യം ബ്രഹ്മാ വരുണേന്ദ്രരുദ്രമരുതഃ തുന്വന്തി ദിവ്യൈസ്തവൈ വേദൈ സാംഗപദക്രമോപനിഷദേ ഗായന്തി യം സാമഗാഃ. ധ്യാനാവസ്ഥിതതദ്ഗതേന മനസാ പശ്യന്തി യം യോഗിനോ യസ്യാന്തം ന വിദുഃസുരാസുരഗണാഃ. ദേവായ തസ്മൈ നമഃ. സർവധർമാൻ പരിത്യജ്യ മാമേകം ശരണം വ്രജ. അഹം സർവപാപേഭ്യോ മോക്ഷയിഷ്യാമി മാ ശുചഃ. Slokas 21 to last 29. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Shri Krishna Paramatmani Namaha. Adha Panchamodhyayah Karma Sannyasa Yogaha. Shri Bhagavanuvacha Bahya Sparshveshva Saktatma Vindatyatmani Yasukham Sabrahma Yoga Yuktatma Sugamakshayamashnude Yehi Samsparshaja Bhukhaha Dukkayonaya Evate Adyantavanta Kaunteya न तेषु रमते पुतः शक्नोति हैव यः सोढुम् प्राक्शरीरविमोक्षणात् कामक्रोधोद्भवं वेगं स युक्तः स सुखी नरः योऽन्तः सुखोऽन्तरा रामः तथान्तर्ज्योतिरेव यः स योगी ब्रह्मनिर्वाणम् ब्रह्मभूतोऽधिगच्छति लभन्ते ब्रह्मनिर्वाणम् ऋषयक्षीणकल्मषाः छिन्नद्वैधा यदात्मानः सर्वभूतहिते रताः कामक्रोधवियुक्तानां यतीनां यदचेतसाम् अभितो ब्रह्मनिर्वाणं वर्तते विदितात्मनाम् स्पर्शान् कृत्वान् बहिर्बाह्यं चक्षुश्चैवान्तरे भ्रुवोः प्राणापानौ समौ कृत्वा नासाभ्यन्तरचारिणौ यदीन्द्रियमनो बुद्धिः मुनिर्मोक्षः परायणः विगतेच्छभयक्रोधाः यः सदा मुक्त एव सः भोक्तारं यज्ञतपसां सर्वलोकमहेश्वरं सुहृदं सर्वभूतानां ज्ञात्वा मां शान्तिमृच्छति। ॐ तत्सत् इति श्रीमद्भगवद्गीतासु उपनिषत्सु ब्रह्मविद्यायां योगशास्त्रे श्रीकृष्णार्जुनसंवादे कर्मसन्न्यासयोगो नाम पंचमोऽध्यायः।
Hari Om. Sudesh ji, please come for the recap.
Hari Om. Last week we discussed on Shloka 22 and 23. 22 Shloka says that the enjoyment that are born of contexts are only generators of pain, for they have a beginning and an end. O son of Kunti, the wise do not rejoice in them. So this is what mentioned in the Shloka 22, where Krishna says that the wise man, they do not run after the enjoyment from that contact with the external objects and beings. That's what Krishna is trying to tell, that because these people, the wise men, they clearly understand the limitations of such enjoyment, because they will refrain from that indulgence actually. So Krishna also cautions us here that pleasures either arising from this external context are always womb of sorrows. So this is actually one warning, and again he warns that all these pleasures which you are getting from these external words are short-lived. So here then the Swami Krishna and Gurudeva also given one example also, that any laddu, but any our favorite sweet, when we eat first sweet, we rejoice it, but repeating the same after some time, we're not going to rejoice. So it is going to really, eventually we are going to have an uncomfortable in our stomach. So here clearly says that what Shloka says, that wise man doesn't rejoice contact of born of this enjoyment from this external world. That's what understand from Shloka 22. The 23, what it says, that he who is able while still here in this world to withstand before the liberation from the body the impulse born out of desire and anger, he is a yogi, he is a happy man. So what Shloka 23 says, that Krishna here, gives a assurance to us that, the man is capable of living a perfect joy, only he makes some necessary adjustments himself. So that adjustment is required to be happy. Otherwise, you will just end up running towards the external words only. So here, what we say that desire, because always every scripture say that desire is the main culprit. So desire for acquisition and enjoyment of objects and beings are most common requirements of human being. So when desires are interrupted, then it lead to anger. That's what anger is, modification of desire. That's what Krishna warned us many times, even in earlier shlokas also. Here, Krishna gives assurance that the man can capable of living perfect joy in this world when he makes some necessary adjustments. So we have to adjust mind and intellect so that all this withstand that impulse of desire and anger, so that he can become a yogi. So here, the person who is actually who win the joy and grief, then he gain a certain detachment from all this external world, and by redirecting himself the desire to a higher goal or higher aims or something, such yogi only achieve the disciplined life and happy life. That's what we understand, discussed last week on shloka 23. Hari Om.
Hari Om, Sudesh. I request Nanduji to start the next verses for the discussion.
Hari Om. What sort of man resting in Brahman attains Brahman? The Lord says from the 24th shloka. Yunta sukhuntara ramaha tatantara jyotireva yaha sayogi brahma nirvanam brahma bhutodhigacchati. Yah who antasukha, one who happiness is within. Antara rama, one who rejoices within. Tatha also, Antajyoti, one who is illuminated within. Eva Yah, Saha, that yogi, Brahma Nirvana, absolute freedom or moksha. Brahma Bhuta, becoming Brahman. Adhigacchati, attain. He who is happy within, who rejoices within, who is illuminated within, that yogi attains absolute freedom or moksha himself, becoming Brahman. From the above three stanzas, it becomes clear that according to Krishna, none of the usual fields of joy and happiness are visited by the most of perfection, man of perfection. Neither the warmth of flesh or the thrills of emotions and the ecstasies of thinking are available for him. Renouncing them all and conquering both love and hatred, the yogi in sheer transcendence attains a realm of bliss. And Krishna declares that such a man alone can be said to be really happy. It becomes very difficult to believe that a man in that condition would feel any happiness at all. All instruments of happiness have been rejected by him. There is no more any field for him to gain joy or satisfaction. Renouncing all foods, one cannot have any joy or eating. Again, it is against the very logic of rhythm of life to say that man will be satisfied by a mere emptiness, a dark cave of total negation. Every living creature roams about in all its available fields of activity, seeking to gain and achieve a greater fulfillment of joy. Even the state of complete absence of pain, though it is a platform of relief, is not the summit where an individual will feel contented and fully satisfied. Under the above circumstances, it will be mere exaggerations to believe Krishna's assertion in the previous three stanzas. To avoid such a serious misunderstanding among the students, the Lord is here trying to find out for us the positive glow of assured divinity when the ego rediscovers itself to be the self as it is, renounces all its delusory preoccupations with the false and the fleeting. The substantial and definite experience of the solid bliss enjoyed and lived by the self, in the self, as the self, is indicated here in this stanza. The seeker in his detachment not only withdraws himself from the world of objects outside, but also discovers in himself an ampler sense of bliss and security. This inward joy is not a rare flickering flash, but a constantly experienced factor. Such a well-developed seeker, striving constantly on the path, comes to discover a field of fruitful entertainment and engage in recreation in the brilliant light of joyous satisfaction within himself. To him, his entire within is flooded with the light of pure consciousness. His heart is thereafter lit with the glow divine. Such an individual who has withdrawn himself completely within, where he has learned to enter a will and court and live in it, is the one who has come to know Brahman. In his realization of the infinite, he has come to experience the bliss of Brahman, his smokeless shrine of truth. Moreover, Labhante Brahma Nirvana, Rushayashina Kalmashaha, Chinnadvaitayatatmanaha, Sarvabhuta Hiterataha. Labhante obtain Brahma Nirvana, absolute freedom or moksha. Rushaya, rishis, Shina Kalmashaha, those whose sins are destroyed. Chinnadvaitaha, whose dualities are torn asunder. Yatatmanaha, those who are self-controlled. Sarvabhuta hite, in the welfare of all beings. Rataha, rejoicing. Those rishis obtain absolute freedom or moksha, whose sins have been destroyed, whose dualities are turned asunder, who are self-controlled and intent on the welfare of all beings. All the glorious, if it is so, are used, have been borrowed from the Vedic lore, and there is not a single idea which can be pinned on to the yellow grab of Krishna as an original idea from the Dwarka. Arjuna was soaked with the mere bookish knowledge of the Vedas, and therefore he had misunderstood those terms as his whole generation did at that time. He thought the God realization is an inert, lifeless existence of impossible withdrawal from the destinies of the world around him, and selfishly enjoying the bliss and his soul in the sacred caves of his own heart. To wipe away this mad slur upon the immortal culture, the Hindus, which had grown out of the rank ignorance among the faithful followers, Krishna is exploding himself in the following stanza to express what the perfect master would do when he has once contacted the infinite, the perfect. When a man of meditation striving diligently with his senses well under his control comes to wash off all his sinful mental impressions, which had been creating in him a welling of the self behind an unending array of doubts regarding the reality. He gains the joy of self when his ignorance, which is nothing other than the agitations of the mind, which is Vikshepa, and the consequent welling of the truth, Avarana, has been removed. Knowledge of his real nature dawns in his bosom, and he discovers himself as the self. Having thus rediscovered the self, having thus gained the goal of all evolution, what would be the duties of such an individual in an existence till finally, with a cheerful farewell, he drops his mortal coil down to merge himself with what he knows to be his own self. The general impression is that he will move about in The world, like a mad walking stone statue that eats at least once a day, a threat to society, a moving bundle of contagion, and a screaming pillar of despondency and despair, such a living death is not a goal indicated by the Vedas, nor did the Hindu rishis ever try to carve out of a man a walking corpse. Self-realization is not a melancholy parade crawling to a predestined tomb, but it is a joyous rite of a palace of truth, from which man has wandered away in his own ignorance and confusion. A true prophet is one who lives consumed in an ever-reviving fire of love. He ceaselessly strives to living out the self from the non-self that is welling it in all other forms around and about him. This is indicated by the term engaged in the good of all beings. This Lokaseva becomes his recreation of self-appointed engagement. His body, mind, and intellect are offered as oblations into the sacred fires of activity, and while remaining at rest within himself, the saint lives on in an unbroken consciousness of the divine, the eternal. Manishji, may I go with my thoughts?
Yes, please.
Hariom. With two slokas from shloka 24 and 25 and the Gurudeva's commentary, there are like some of the words which I had never heard about those words, and the that is the beauty of the Gurudeva's English. In the both shlokas, we can see that there is one word which is like a common as like a Brahma Nirvana, which is like a freedom or maybe moksha, what we are saying. And Gurudeva in commentary also referred about 3 stanzas also, which is talking about like a similar language thing. And in shloka number like 24, there are like 3 things three things Gurudeva mentioned, which is like who is like happy within, who like rejoices within, who illuminated within, that who is get like liberated, or what we can say as a like a moksha. In the same connection, there is like one movie coming from the Samartha Ramdasa from Dasabodha, and that is, I feel that is like very important, which is talking about like Samartha is saying about like Jnana manje Atma Jnana, pahave apanasi apana. What is meant by that? Like Jnana, that means like Atma Jnana is the only Jnana. And to do that, what you have to do, you have to see yourself. What is the thing especially happening with us? Like we are looking outside and like thinking about like people see he's like that, the other person is like that. Whereas we are not looking ourselves. How am I? And that is the thing we need to do. And that happiness and everything is within us. And that we need to discover. The commentary for the like 24 shloka, or especially for me, it was a little bit tough to understand. Whereas maybe in 25th shloka, it is little bit, I feel little bit easy thing, but it might be may not be correct understanding. And where it is mentioned by Gurudeva, like Labante thing, means like who is attaining those things, like and there are like 4 conditions Gurudeva mentioned. So who is like having like, who has like Chinna Advaita, who is like dualities are removed, then the who is like self-controlled, and who is like sarva bhuta hite ratha, who is happy with like, he's not like selfish, but he's like thinking about like each and every person. And again, I would like to quote one away from the Samartha Ramdasa from Dasabodh, and where he's saying like Narayana se vishwi tachi puja karat javi ya karne toshvavi konitri kaya, means Narayana, who is like a god, is there everywhere in the world, and what we need to do, we need to worship him. And by worshipping, what we need to do, ya karna toshvavi konitri kaya, means any body that is not necessary to be like a human body or anything. We need to satisfy the body of maybe nowadays like a heat is starting, so just maybe keep little bit water outside, or maybe grains for the birds. So that way we are like, the God is everywhere. And I would like to quote one one instance from Santa Ekanatha, who is like 16th century Maharashtrian saint. So during those days, like from Kashi, they used to like carry water of Ganges and offer to Rameshwaram. And Santa Ekanatha was having that like water from Ganges and traveling to like Rameshwaram. And on the way, he noticed that there was like a donkey dying, and he offered that water instead of like taking to Rameshwaram. He has given that water to the donkey, and that's how those people became like a saint. Those are like small thoughts from my side. Hari Om.
Hari Om, Nandaji. Then we will first Ajayji to start. I think Ishwarji is not available today. So let's start with Ajayji.
Hari Om. Om Sri Chinmaya Sadgurave Namah. Hari Om. Yet another two beautiful verses under discussion today, verse number 24 and 25. As mentioned here, last three stanzas actually preparing us to reach this particular slokas. We have been listening, as the, kind of a goal of evolution as the liberation. Here, the two verses clearly indicates how the liberation is happening and what is the state of the one who is liberated within this same life itself. Jivan Mukta, man of perfection, or the wise man, whatever the terms which is used, the wise man living within this life itself. Last verse also connecting to verse number 23. It is mentioned as while in the living itself, Shaknote Heva, yes, Sodam Praksharira Vimokshanat Kama Krodothavam Vegam, Sayuktasa Sukhi Naraha, who can withstand the impulse of desire and anger. Within this, that means the vasanas, he is come across transcending the vasanas, he is completely void of vasanas. He can withstand the impulse of desire and anger because of the eruption of vasanas. He can withstand that one. That he alone is the Sukhi, and he alone is the Yogi. That is been mentioned. And then here it is, the verse number 24, beautiful verse. Yonda Sukondhararama Tadandhar Jyotirevayah Sayogi Brahmanurvanam Brahmabhutodi Gachati. Yonda Sukondhararama Tadandhar Jyotirevayah Sayogi Brahmanurvanam Brahmabhutodi Gachati. Yaha, those who are Andasukham, finding extreme happiness in the within. Andararamaha, and he rejoices within that one. Tatha Yaha. Who is that one? Likewise, he is doing that one. He is rejoicing in that one, within the heart. Andar Jyoti Eva, that illuminating, beautiful light within that one. Andar Jyoti, that light. Sayogi Brahmabhoda, he becomes the Brahman. Brahmanurvanam Adhigachadi, he is getting liberated. Yes, Gurudev mentioned here it is by the self, in the self, as the self. He becomes that Brahman alone. So normally the two type of wise people and otherwise people. Most of us like that in that range. We know the joys of the world through our Jnanendriyas and whatever the joys within the limited joy which we can experience is through our Jnanendriyas only, the five senses only. That's what is mentioned, that one, which Gurudev mentioned. Neither the warmth of the flesh nor the thrills of emotions and ecstasies of the thinking. These are the BMI level, body, mind, intellect level. The warmth of the flesh, which we experience through our five senses of organs, and the thrills of emotion through the mind, and the ecstasies of the thinking in the ideological part or intellectual part. Normally, our world, our OIT is in this range, in the range of BMI. We experience, we extracting, we getting this joys from this two only. We are limited to that one. Here it is, ones who are that yogi, he is above, going above, transcending on the BMI, and which we do not have an idea. Once we transcend to the BMI, what is the kind of sukha, which is mentioned here, we are not aware of that one. But he is finding himself by the self, in the self, as the self, he alone that one. He enjoyed that one. This antashitalita, the inner peace, inner coolness, inner that what you call, we cannot express on words that one. That is the andar jodi, andar rejoicing. He finds himself within that one. And he alone is that one. Brahma Nirvanam Adhigachati. That is a moksha part is very well clearly indicated in this 2 to 3 words here. It is mentioned Brahma Nirvanam Adhigachati. He attains the Brahma Nirvanam. Actually, Nirvanam is the word. When we clearly look into that one, there is no eruption of vasanas. Normally, we have the freedom of vasanas. That is the normal freedom. We mentioned that one. As Gurudev mentioned, it's not the freedom of vasana, freedom from vasanas. Freedom from vasanas. Vasanas are coming, but it is not erupting out. It is not that rocketing is not taking place. It is not coming out of that one. That is completely you go above that one, because as mentioned, he is able to withstand the vasanas, pressure of vasanas, withstand the impulse of the desire and anger. He is able to stand that one. He is going above that one and finding the joy within himself, the andar jodi, that whatever the joy within it, that joy is the ultimate joy of that perfection. He is rejoicing in that one. He is actually reveling in that one. That particular version, to him, the entire within the flood of light with the pure consciousness, his heart is thereafter elate with the glow of divine. That divinity is already start expressing himself within that one. So he is the inner, all the Kshina Kamal, this all other sins and vasanas, everything has been completely eradicated within himself. The mind become pure to reflect the glory of the Lord. It is been the glory of Brahman. His mind become pure and purer. And that then the light himself, it is that the glow of divine is happening within that one. And then once that person, as the Lord Shankara mentioned in that Sri Dakshinamurti Stotram, Nana Chitra Kadodara Stira Mahadiva Prabhapaswaram Jnanam Yasyadu Chakshuradi Karanadwara Behispandade. From his orifices, his eyes and nose and the tongue, everything, it is that Jodi, that Diva Prabhapaswaram is coming out. So he becomes Brahman itself. How it is, and he rejoices in that Brahman, that Brahman Nirvanam. It is because we can only through the words of the Puja Gurudev or Adi Shankara, we can understand the words because that's the state of a wise man. We are otherwise people, which we can just get a glimpse of that joy, which is a very, very, from the words, we can just get a glimpse of that one only. And the next verse is Labhante Brahmanurvanam, Rishaya Kshina Kalmashaha, Chinnadvaita Yatatmanaha, Sarvabhuta Hiterataha, Kshina Kalmashaha, his sins are completely eradicated. Chinnadvaita is the toner ascender of the duality. Yatatmanaha, self-control. Sarvabhuta Hiterataha is engaging in the well-being of all. That is after getting the Brahman Nirvanam, what he is doing, his job, he is doing that one. Sarvabhuta Hiterataha, because he himself identified with the entire universe. So he is, for him, nobody is the other person. He is identified himself with that one, and he is equally interested. Not only his well-being, he is interested in he is engaged in the welfare of all beings. That Rishaya, that Jnani or Rishi, Brahma Nirvana Lepate, he is actually experiencing the Brahmanandam, Brahma Nirvana. The both words of this word is coming, Brahma Nirvana is coming. Both words of the word, the Brahma Nirvana. That's a moksha for the liberation from all vasanas, liberation from all sins, liberation from all this in a pure himself. And that joy, that light of the joy, he experienced himself. Not only he himself enjoying, he himself is the glow of divine, that one. Not only that, he radiates that one through his all orifices of his jnanendriyas and karmendriyas. It is coming out of that joy is coming out through them. When we go to a great Mahatma, we can definitely feel this particular experience, because he is full of that jnana, he is full of that radiant energy, that he actually radiate that also. Not only he himself is in that field, he tried to spread that happiness, spread that state of well-being to others also. He is a sarvabhuta hiterataha. He is engaged in the well-being of all others. As Nanduji mentioned here, that Santagannath Maharaja and all these things, they are actually, they are melt with that kind of a kripa, that kind of a thing. Even the precious Ganga water he is giving to a donkey which is getting died. That is the thing. He is sarvabhuta hiterataha. That's the state of being. That is the state of a great yogi. Those who are liberated within this world itself. Notice as a post Mastasuri is not happening. Within the world itself, while living here, there's a Jivan Mukta Avastha. He is once attained this moksha, liberation, he is work for the engaging himself for the Sarvabhuta Hiterataha. This we can feel from all great Mahatmas or prophets, which is we can see the from our history, we can find out, we can understand this state of the. But we and the wise people, otherwise and wise people, we are far apart. That's a gap has to be filled up through our studies. Hari Om. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ajay. Balaji sir, we will move your slot to the last because some emergency. Sanjay ji may not be able to attend today. So in the meanwhile, I will request Rajendran ji to share his views.
Hari Om. Hari Om. Well explained by those who have spoken before me. When I go through these stanzas, what I remember is 23 stanza number 23. Shaknodi haivaya sodum prak sharira vimochana kama krodhat bhavam vegam sayukta sa sukhi naraha. Sukhi naraha is the key word actually. One who is able while still have in this world to withstand before liberation from the body, the impulse born out of the desire and anger. He is a yogi. He is a happy man. In Bhajo Govindam, we used to say, the Acharya Bhagavad Padar says, Yogaradhova, Bhogaradhova, Sangaragadhova, Sangha Vihina, Yasyad Brahmani Ramade Chittam, Nandadi Nandatyava. So actually it's a matter of where your chittam, the mind is there. If it is dwelling always in the Brahman, then either you enjoy or you don't enjoy. Either you are a yogi or bhogi. Actually that person is happy. He is a happy man. That is what the first impression, first thing that came into my mind is this stanza of Bhaj Govinda. And Nanduji was speaking about feeding the birds and all. Such person, he feels always that Isha Vasim Idam Sarvam Yat Kinja Jagatyam Jagat. Everywhere, God alone is dwelling. Nothing else is there. So we have to serve. And these three stanzas, one is very much connected, and it's like a garland with the different type of flowers strung in the same thread. So when it comes to stanza 24, Yonda Sugo Andara Arama Tada Andar Jyodir Eva Yaha Sa Yogi Brahma Nirvanam Brahma Bodho Adigachadi. here this stanza is escalating to a higher level. He who is happy within, who enjoys within, who is illuminated within, that yogi attains absolute freedom or moksha, himself becoming Brahman. Gurudeva has, in his poetical language, has explained, it's wonderful language. He has explained this, There is no point in reading the same again to our listeners. So I'm not going through that. What I understand, I am telling. There are people, when we talk about these desires and kama, krodha and all, Yadilo mundi lunjida krishirsha kashayambara bahukrita vesha pasyan nabi naja pasyadi kalushaha udara nimittam bahukrita vesham. Just for the stomach, they are, wearing different type of attires. So these people are actually just for the survival. But actual yogi, and in another stanza, Bhajagovindam itself, see, he has gone for a sannyasa and leading a life of sannyasa, but in his inside, lot of kama, lot of krodha. That kind of people never gets the moksha. Either you are a normal person, grihastha, or you are a sannyasi. That is agre vanni prishte bhanu ratrau chibuka samorpida janu karadala bhiksha tarudala vasa tadabina munjatyasha pashaha. See, when the whole overnight you are in the sitting in the fire, near the fire, because it is too cold in the Himalayas and all. Sun is rising from the other side. You are taking your arm in the hand only. You don't have even a bowl to get bhiksha, and you are sleeping under a tree. Still, the desires are sprouting one after another. So how can he become a yogi? These are the stanzas that came into my mind when I was going through these three stanzas. When we come, then we are talking about Labande Brahma Nirvanam Rishaya China Kalmasha Chinnai Dvaida Yadatma Sarva Buddha Hida Sarva Buddha Hiderataha Sarva Buddha Hideraha Rataha. That is what we actually have to be. Sarva Buddha Hiderataha. This is what we have, we are learning from this. The Rishi obtained absolute freedom or moksha, whose sins have been destroyed, whose dualities are torn asunder, who are self-controlled and intent on the welfare of all beings. Welfare of all beings is the key word. When we are not living, we are not one body. We are, the whole world is, we are, like all other creatures, the same. There is not, the body is different, but only the soul is same. So in principle, one is not different from another. So we have to serve others. That is the key thing. That is the thing I was trying to understand from this. Welfare of all beings. Again, coming back to Nanduji's, those serving the birds and all. Now the season is summer. It is getting, dry. We have to feed the animals that come to us, birds and other living beings. Whatever of the way we can feed them, we have to feed them, because they, after all, are ourselves only. Hari Om. Thank you.
Hari Om. Thank you, Rajendranji. Jairamji, would you be able to?
Hari Om. The last three verses describes the qualities of a man of perfection. it sounds like a tall order and difficult to believe. Especially when today's world, we are living in the midst of all false promises. This commercial world is such that they promise us a lot of things, but we know, now we have taken for granted that this is all just an eyewash and it is really not going to happen. They promise a cream which makes you fairer in 7 days. And there are so many other things. So these commercial advertisements all over, we take it with a pinch of salt. We read that and just dismisses. So this has become a habit. The other day I was reading in the local newspaper, a person was won a lottery from Abu Dhabi, 1 million dirhams. And the organizers contacted him. He thought it is a false call. And he said somebody is fooling. And he refuses to attend the further calls from the organizers. Such is the world, and they are searching for him, how to contact this person and hand over the prize. And Gurudev's commentary says that even during the time of Arjuna's, this ignorance among the faithful followers, Krishna says that they also had a similar kind of view about this life to practice. Recently, I saw an interview of a journalist asking a question to a Hare Krishna order monk. He questions that what is the need for the study of Bhagavad Gita? It is not in our constitution. So is it compulsory? By reading, the life will improve? If I don't read, whether the life will stop? These are a lot of sorts of questions. And up to that extent, he said, you people keep saying this is important, this is urgent. But he felt, that journalist says, that rather you people are brainwashing the youth of the country. Such is the view about Shastras or even about Bhagavad Gita. But this monk responded to the question saying, yes, we are brainwashing. Jarno got a shock. And he said, yes, because the brain is become dirty. You made it dirty, so we are doing a dhobi's job. We are washing the brain. And he quoted the 7 habits of the highly effective people, that famous book by Stephen Covey. Said that he got the maximum inspiration from Bhagavad Gita to write the book. So that makes sense. When someone of our current age says something, then people start believing. The monk said the Bhagavad Gita is such a text that it is a complete man-making book. It talks about everything. How to eat, how much to eat, how to speak, how to control mind. So it deals with everything. For us, at least, when we look into the life of our Pujya Gurudev, all that is talked about a man of perfection. He lived, or those who have just missed him, we have these videos. Even at the falling health, even when his heart was functioning 18%, and the doctors advised not to speak more than 20 minutes, he made it a point to record the entire Bhagavad Gita commentary. And at stretch, he used to speak up to 1 hour. And the result is that even now, we are deriving the blessings of this recording. So for a man of perfection, the life is living for others. A true prophet who strives to bring the same joy he experienced to maximum people for maximum period of time. That is the only aim of his life. There is nothing personal. He is living for the world. So there is no question of coming down. Even a commoner like me, when we go to Sidabari, for example, from Delhi to Pathankot by train, and from Pathankot by a bus to Sidabari, all around there is a lot of things good. It's a totally overall a good experience. But once you reach the ashram, the beautiful atmosphere there, and the total peace and tranquility at the samadhi, you feel like all that joy that we have experienced during the travel is nothing compared to this. You almost feel like not coming back from there. So that could be the state of a man of perfection. So the ordinary joys and attraction, he will not be interested at all. It is like a mountaineer who reaches the peak of the mountain. Why should be interested in the lower peaks? He is already reached on the top. So this description, which had a doubt whether this is achievable, and that to answer it is that no, yes, this is completely possible. A man, the saint, lives on in an unbroken consciousness of divine, the eternal. Hari Om.
Thank you, Dharamji. Pradeep ji, would you share your views?
योऽन्तरारामः तथा अन्तर्ज्योतिरेव च स योगी ब्रह्मनिर्वाणं ब्रह्म भूतो अधिगच्छति लभन्ते ब्रह्मनिर्वाणं ऋषयक्षीणकल्मषाः छिन्नद्वैधा यदात्मानः सर्वभूतहिते रताः. So here it is explained about the one who has reached that level. So for as far as we are concerned, we should be looking at what are the aspects by which we can try to understand this state, or to the sadhanas which we have to put in. So as we have seen the earlier verse, the Gama Krodha Udbhavam Vegam, that is a prime task with us to control the Vegam, the Chobam, or the impulse of Kama and Krodha resulting out of that. So in this, the second verse, the 3-4 conditions which are said, that Labande Brahmanirvanam Rishaya Shinagalmashaha Chinnadvaidaha Yadadmanaha Sarvabhuta Hiterataha. So this is that the yogi who has achieved that state is in. He will have Shinagalmashaha, he will not have the vasana impulses or the sins, which is kalmasha. That as Ishwarji has said, that the angle of deflection, that is the kalmasha, and Chinnadvaida, all doubts are cleared. So we have seen that kalmasha is nothing but the kama krodhodbhavam vegam, that impulse. So for them, these will be reduced, or and doubts will be gone. The chapter 3, if you see, the Bhagavan's advice at the end is to destroy the Kama, which is the enemy and which is difficult to be conquered. And in the end of 4th chapter, Bhagavan's advice is to cut asunder all the doubts which is creating as an obstacle. So these two things are crossed over by the Muni. So chapter 3 and chapter 4 has to be our task of looking at this China Kalmasha and Chinnadvaida. The Edatmanaha, one who strives who has self-controlled, and Sarvabhuta Hiterataha. So this particular sentence is probably we can, from various examples, Jairamji used to tell us, and we know from the life of Gurudev. So these words of Gurudev, this Loka Seva becomes his recreation, his self-appointed engagement, His body, mind, and intellect are offered as oblations into the sacred fires of activity, and while remaining at rest within himself, the saint lives on in an unbroken consciousness of the divine, the eternal. So that Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha is a Gurudev is his own life. It is. So what I wish to connect here is with respect to Uddhava Gita, where Lord Krishna is explaining to Uddhava in Bhagavatam that certain answer to certain questions of Uddhava. Uddhava is as already in the this Uddhava Gita and Arjuna Gita. I mean this Bhagavad Gita. Both are Bhagavan is giving out, but one is in the Pravritti Marga, Arjuna, whereas Uddhava is already in the Nivritti Marga. But for him, he is explaining in detail everything and is giving some beautiful example definitions of answers to his questions. Like what is Shaucham? He is saying Karmasu Asangaha is the meaning, is Shaucham. The neatness or Shuddhi is what Karmasu Asangaha. So have attachment, detachment to the action you are involved. Karmasu Asangaha is Shaucham. Whereas we normally give the example or the meaning as internal, external, purity and all these things. But so that purity is directly connected with this kalmasha, the removal of vasanas or something. How that happens is remaining karmasu asanga. Then Chinnadvaita and some other points are like Samadarsanam. So in Samadarsanam, it is Satyam is defined as Samadarsanam, to see everything at the equally. Like we have seen in the earlier verse also, Brahmana Vidya Vinaya Sampanne Brahmane Gavihastini. So to see everything internally the same, because you cannot see an elephant and a cow and a Brahmana and a Chandala externally the same. So to internally see that as the self, as the same, as one. And then this Labham. See, always we used to have this Sarva Bhuta Hiterata is connecting to that. We always ask for when you're doing something, what do I get it? What is the profit out of it? So Bhagavan says that Labham is Bhagavan's bhakti, mad bhakti rastu. And then Kamatyaga, tapas is defined as Kamatyagam. So the renunciation of Kama is considered as tapas. And then the wealth is you are following the Varnasrama Dharma in the dharmic way of living is the wealth. And Shauryam, the chivalry or great Shauryam is Swabhava Vijay, the winning over your own nature or habit, character is Shauryam. So these are some that came up to my mind. So these are the things which even Bhagavan is telling to such a high-level person like Uddhava, when he is asking a question about what are the definition of or the meaning of all these things. So this is actually speaking, it is very the same eye-opener to understand. So by tapas is for kamatyagam, and the shaucham is karmasu asangaha, and all this type of thing. So these are all tips given to us how to live our life, so that we can understand, and we can understand how that antasukha is generated, because it is ultimately connected to madbhakti rastu te. When Prithu Maharaj is asking, Bhagavan is asking what boon you want, Prithu Maharaj is saying that I want, I don't know what I want, but please give me whatever you think is good for me. Then Bhagavan says, madbhakti rastu te. May you have bhakti on me. So that is the greatest of the boons which one can have, and that is achieved by Puja Gurudev as being the Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha, with that state of Brahma Nirvana. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Sukumarji, would you like to share your views? Okay.
Not today, please.
Okay. Dilipji?
Hari Om, Manishji. No, I'm not prepared, Manishji. Hari Om.
Hari Om. Hari Om, anyone else who's prepared or wants to share his views, please come forward. Then I'll move the mic to Balaji. Meenakshi ji, do you want to share your views here?
Hari Om, Manishi. I don't have much to speak, but I'll just speak a few words. Verse 24 is a bit difficult to understand as spoken by Nanduji as well. It is probably at a different level. One thing which I took from the verse 24 is generally also, so it talks about withdrawal from sense objects. It generally also, if we try to, at our level also, if we are too much outside and want to look for happiness in sense objects, we actually don't get happiness. So at our level also, if we can control that, control ourselves and try to control the senses, I think that should give us more peace or whatever. It can give us more stability, not peace. And in verse 25, probably it's more easier to understand in terms of relating us. So the person who has achieved Brahmanyan, what happens to that person? So he's not sitting there as a stone, but what he actually does is he comes out, like Gurudev comes out and brings out the self from the non-self. So Lok Seva becomes his recreation. That was a very nice word, recreation. So recreation for him is not going out and eating out and watching movies and being out, but for him, his recreation is that he sees the universal principle in everybody. And serving them is his priority. So those are the two things which probably we could, it's a take home, that working, the 25th verse actually talks about four characteristics. One is one is whose sins are destroyed, whose dualities are torn asunder, self-control and intent on welfare of all beings. Sins are destroyed and dualities are torn asunder are a second stage, but at our stage, if self-control is what can be practiced and intent on welfare of all beings can be practiced. So generally also, if we see around, I don't know if you guys have heard about Parivar, the institution Parivar. The founder of Parivar is an ex-IIT grad, IIT and IIM grad. And when he came out of it, he made a list of what he doesn't want to do. He didn't want a corporate job. He didn't want to get married. He didn't want to have kids. He didn't want to live a normal life. So that gave him clarity of what he wanted to do. Then he knows clearly that I don't want to do this. Now he needs to find out what he wants to do. So as he was passing by, he just saw some small children, orphan children on the streets. He picked them up and he brought them home and he started educating them. And from there, that organization now has become quite global. It's got headquarters in the US, but it started with this humble beginnings when he actually brought them home with no money, nothing. And he started taking students, IITs, he started taking tuitions, and that's how he actually brought more children. And it was such a small, selfless thing. So he was clear that I don't want to do this, but rather he's an IIT grad. He could have got into the best of the companies in Google or anywhere. But that, his purpose was not that. His purpose was clear that this is what I want to do. So these are some of the key things that I have taken from Hari Om.
Hari Om, thank you. Balaji sir.
Hari Om, Sri Gurubhyo Namaha, Sadgurunath Maharaj ki Jai. Voice is clear, Manishji?
Absolutely, please go ahead.
You only must wonder if we are not under the ambit and shelter of Gurudev, what we would be. This one thought can clarify many of our doubts, and also it can this one thought that what we would do without Gurudev, if this one thought is kind of, thought regularly once in a while, can become a rear view mirror to see what progress we have made in all our, our association with Gurudev and the study group. So why I'm telling this is that, the subject matter that we are discussing today, for it to be successful, requires an important quality to be developed, and nothing but gratitude. So gratitude to Gurudev at all times is an essential quality that the mind and intellect together has to develop, the help of which can transform ourselves to the levels mentioned herein, or if not transform completely, at least set us in the right direction. Now the question here we are discussing is only all about the direction of our thoughts. We are very used to outward thinking. Why do we think outward? Why do we engage our equipments of body, mind and intellect constantly in the outer world? Because one, we have to, for the sake of transactional living, for the sake of survival, for gaining food, shelter, clothing, which the equipments require, basics. All our basic needs, no doubt, are fulfilled by our engagement of our mind and intellect to the outer world. This cannot be denied. But slowly, in this engagement, we tend to become convinced and we start believing that there is only this one direction. And we are here only to engage ourselves with this OET, outer world. And each engagement, depending upon which equipment of ours is in contact with the world, gives us an experience. So if the experience is good, if the contact and that aspect of the experience is good, we get a good feeling. If the experience is bad, then we develop a dislike towards it. So this is how the beginning of the division of the world happens in our engagement with the world outside. What is this division? The likes and dislikes. So automatically the rest of our life is spent in chasing those things that we like and running away from things that we don't like. And therefore the duality starts setting in the transactional world, in the outer world. This is, we cannot avoid, we cannot really totally be away from it in the physical level. And therefore, the need for the scriptures and the guidance to point out certain things that we have massively missed are becoming very essential. Now, if we all recall, in the very beginning of the Bhagavad Gita, Gurudev has given one introduction. In that introduction, there is a given there. Now, many of you would recall what I am telling you, not very difficult. We have seen that the mind is split into two, the objective mind and the subjective mind. Between the objective mind and the subjective mind, we know that there are these, what is pushing you outward, these patches of vasanas. So therefore, from the BMI chart also, we can know clearly that vasana expression becomes choiceless. And as long as the vasanas are existing in us, and as long as these vasanas are pointed towards bhoga, of enjoyment of the world of objects, our mind will be definitely objective in nature. So the very beginning, and therefore it is also called as the causal body. In the study of the bodies, Dehatraya, we know that the vasanas, being the causal body, become the very cause of setting the direction of our mind and intellect, and consequently the engagement of our body and our sense of body, meaning the sense organs and the organs of action. All this 10, containing 5 organs of senses and 5 organs of actions, are in constant engagement with the world outside. And what actually happens in this kind of an engagement, that is what was pointed out to us in many occasions, that we become our joy. Why our joy? Because all our engagements are purpose. The purpose behind this is happiness, contentment, joy, without which there is no need for you to go. When we go in search of a restaurant and a particular variety of food, the need there is the hunger. Not the hunger actually, but the desire to have a particular taste of food. So that is qualifying to become a vasana. So even in that Maslow's hierarchy theorem, most of us will know the physical needs and the mental needs in the hierarchy level, right? So the mental needs, physical needs is only at the basic level. If we are able to contain ourselves with the physical needs, no harm. But it is when this mental needs becomes more and more in a particular pattern, which we call as the vasanas. In Gurudev's beautifully many times has indicated what are these vasanas, are nothing but a particular channel of thoughts that always takes you to that particular destination, in that particular direction, in that particular area of enjoyment. And therefore we tend to even recognize that there is another dimension in us, in this constant engagement of this physical and mental needs. And there also in that Maslow's also finally, when you get bored, when there is a repetitive engagement, then we know that it becomes limited. The joy of that engagement becomes limited. This is what is the current theme of discussions which we have studied in the previous shlokas, right? So the engagement of the body, mind and intellect driven by these vasanas, which is the mechanism of action, not only in our engagement with the objects of physical objects for the senses, the emotional objects being craving for love and recognition and so on and so forth, being for the mind, and intellectual ideas giving more directions for more prosperity and more acquisitions of objects that we think will be giving more satisfaction. All these things not only give us fleeting patches of joy, but also in the process create deep channels for us to make this a recurring habit. So this recurring habit combined with the individuality, which becomes our ego, PFT, is the sole reason that makes us to be dwelling in the same level of our engagement. So that is what Gurudev has mentioned in today's commentary also, again the avarna and the vikshepa. So these are the fundamental errors in our life. So the scriptures become and Guru Vakyas become very essential, and the commentaries of Mahatmas become very essential for us to redirect this objective mind from the engagement with the outside world to a different dimension by turning inside. Now the division between the earlier shlokas 22, 20 to 23 and today's shloka 24 is indicating of this transformation. When our habits end by the proper understanding, vidya, by knowledge that the joy that we will get is a very limited one and it is not a permanent one, and it creates a habit of dependence and addiction, and we become enslaved to our mind and intellect's habits, and therefore we travel in the same format of the waves of the ups and downs. When we get, we are happy. When we don't get, we are unhappy. So on and so forth. This is called that a duality, dvandaha. We are impacted by the pair of opposites of the likes and dislikes, getting and not getting. Many shlokas earlier have pointed out to us this impact of plurality on our mind and intellect, and therefore we also follow these patterns of alternates of joy and sorrow. End of sorrow is beginning of joy, end of joy is beginning of sorrow. So it follows a particular pattern, and therefore that word Adi Antavantaha, Adi Antavantaha was given as a knowledge for us to think about this aspect and to turn inward. So what does it do? The wise people who understand that this has Adi Antavantaha, they don't revel in that level anymore, right? So this is starting from our 20th shloka to say that there is a possibility for you to experience this Sukham Akshayam Ashnute. You can enjoy this never-ending source of joy when you asaktaha, when there is a detachment from the bhaya sparsha, when the contacts with the external world is ended, or when there is a detachment. When we say ending, the contact of the mind and intellect and the urge to enjoy must end. The urge to enjoy must end. So this was again amplified in the consequent shlokas by that impulse, vegam. Very important. Why is it that our mind is outward? Because of the kama, krodha, bhavam, vegam. Why is kama born? Again, due to the presence of vasanas. So therefore, that simple cycle suggested by many Mahatmas, including Gurudev and his Diksha Guru, Shivananda Saraswati Swami. Love, start with love, serve, purify, meditate. This is all is the cycle that one has to attempt. Love, serve, purify, meditate. Then what happens? Then there is a possibility of the objective mind turned outside to slowly understand the universal vision, which was also indicated in the earlier verses in this very chapter about how we could get a universal vision. That is that Sama Darshinaha, Vidya Vinaya Sampanne. Endowed with all those things, you get a Sama Darshinaha. So for that purpose, first of all, the understanding that Sama Darshinaha, we need to know this knowledge. What is standing in the way is the Avarna at the intellectual level and Vikshepa at the mind level. Vikshepa is projection due to wrong apprehension. So intellect is giving the wrong information that the mind and the body must engage with the world of objects outside, and these sensual pleasures are the ones that you should look for. The direction is set in the wrong way, and this is because of delusion or ignorance. So the spiritual ignorance becomes the root cause of developing the vasanas. So what is the antidote for that? Until and unless there is scriptural knowledge imbibed in the intellect, until and until the intellect is strengthened with the true knowledge of discrimination, the vasanas will not get weakened. So, how then to gain this knowledge? Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasan has been prescribed generally in the path of evolution. So, what are we supposed to do in the study group as members? Shravana, of course, Manana, of course. If we week-long Ishwarji's prescription before breakfast, 15 minutes is the studying, and Manana aspect must continue. And that will, what will happen? That will bring the desired knowledge, and then the Avarna will slowly end and start understanding through Shravanam, the Upadesha Vakyas of the Gurus, and then slowly the intellect and mind will mellow down and stop becoming selfish. And once this selfish, then Mitaranji also gives very elaborate, in one talk, very simple techniques of how to start turning to become selfless from becoming selfish. First of all, when you do something for yourself, add your immediate, at least you start adding your immediate family in that. Be it a prayer, oh Lord, please make sure that I am successful. Please make sure my friend also passes the exam. Please make sure. So even if you are at that level of praying, which is the most lowest level of a bhakta, asking the Lord for everything that you want, ask for it, along with you for one more person. Then when you start eating, share it with the other creations of the world. So all that pancharunas, slowly, this is a technique of moderation which Mithunanji had advised, which becomes it's not suddenly possible to turn from outside to inside. So you have to start living these values in your daily practices, and therefore to grow from selfishness to selflessness, start from prayer. Praying the Lord that you can help somebody else. Praying the Lord that you can feed one more person. Praying the Lord you can give them one more job. Praying the Lord that you can do something good for the society. So slowly, actually, it is a chicken or egg story. Of course, ultimately, today's shloka in 25, we see that how once you gain Brahma Nirvanam, your entire life will be dedicated for the Sarva Bhuta Hite Rataha. You will live and it becomes the recreation. There is no other entertainment, like all of you all very beautifully pointed out that paragraph of Gurudev. But the point here is that we need to transform to that level. So even for transforming to that level, the entire spirit of Yajna was discussed beautifully in the earlier chapters of number 4. Yes, we have to act, definitely we have to act in the spirit of Yajna. Yajna meaning actions taken up without selfish desires. This was very important learning from the 4th chapter. And in doing so, what happens is that the vasanas will get diluted and more pressure vasanas will reduce, that is selfish vasanas will reduce, and then the mind and intellect can become little bit more calmer to have the mananam, effective mananam of what we are learning. So this is a practical way of evolving slowly but surely. So in all our prayers, first of all, we have to turn our attention to the third, the inner dimension of the Atma. We must understand there is a principle of life, and without this principle of life, the entire functioning of these 3 bodies will not happen, including the causal body. And then we also need to strengthen this idea by recognizing that this life principle in us is residing in all other creations of this world also. And therefore, you are not an individual, separate entity, but then you are linked with the totality of this world. And there is one master controller, the cosmic controller, under whose regime that we all are functioning. So this understanding, if it becomes clear, it becomes the beginning of recognizing there is this inner dimension. And then we start thinking more on that through our satsangam. Then the satsangam, what will happen? Satsangatve nisangatvam. So the satsangam will lead to your help and aid you to develop more and more selfless vasanas and automatically provide asaktaha from bahar sparshaha. So when the contacts with the outside world, all these words are from here only, will slowly decline, and then we can reach to today's state of being anta sukhaha. You will get the joy from within, not on from the any objects. This is the first point of realizing that you can know this very easily. When we go to sleep, the joy comes from within, right? But that is why it's called Anandamaya Koshaha. From the Kosha, Panchakosha Viveka aspect also, the sleep state is, what is it called? It is called Anandamaya Kosha. So there is joy from within. There is no need for depending on anything from the outside world. That is only for sustenance. But the real joy, the endless joy, comes from Akshaya Sukham, comes only from inside. So there is joy from within. You get to realize that even from sleep, even now when you close your eyes and just for a few seconds focus on your breath, what is that experience? And for experiencing that, your mind necessarily has to cooperate with you. And that mind must be not having any agitation towards acquiring something in the future or worrying about something of the what happened in the past. In the present, living in the present, the mind aligned with the entire becomes the principle of yoga. Body, mind and intellect aligned with the inner. So here antaramas, that means ramate, the dwelling also happens within, and in the process you get to see the flashes of joy from within. Antarjyoti, sa yogi brahmanirva. Yogi, here again, when all his body, mind and intellect is totally connected with the inner self, and then when he is happy with himself, and beautifully Ajayji said that word nirvanam, Brahma nirvanam, where there is no expression of vasanas anymore, there is no pressure vasanas anymore, but it is only the absence of all these things. Absence of the vasanas will lead to the presence of Brahma, the Brahma nirvana, Brahman, the inner principle. Brahma bhuto adhikachyati. It is also not only that you will experience the Brahma nirvanam. Brahma nirvanam meaning totally under the influence of the inner, surrendering yourself entirely to the Ishvara, but not certainly under the influence of the mind and intellect. The very first chapter of Kindle Life is often talking about this one only, freedom and licentiousness. Freedom meaning to be free from the influence of the mind. Therefore, and for understanding the 25th chapter apart, beautifully our Jairamji pointed out, but for me, if we just observe the life of Gurudev, we can understand the 25th chapter 25th shloka extremely well. Once you attain the Brahman Nirvanam, that is when you are free from the influence of your mind with its constant pressure of going outward, then what will happen? See, that is why Rishayaha, that word Kshina Kalmashaha is very important. That is when the Kshina, vanishing or cleansing, Kalmashaha, sins here indicating vasanas. So the absence of vasanas, meaning selfish vasanas. It cannot be, also Ajayji also beautifully pointed out that aspect of to be free from the influence of the vasanas. Vasanas will come and go, but is our mind and intellect influenced by that vasanas? Are we able to drop it off the moment we recognize that something is coming into our mind and intellect system? That very beginning of the ladder of fall, what is that word? Sankastesu, Dhyayato Vishayan Pumsa. So at the Dhyayate level, if the thought comes, we must be alert to drop it off. Anchoring ourselves with the higher principles, Narayana's feet, and then all this selfish desire, Dhyayate, that is the very basic first alert point. So anyway, so when that happens, Gurudev, look at Gurudev's life, look at his way he has lived, look at what he has taught to us. Think of the Ashtottara Namavali. Every aspect of the Ashtottara Namavali is recognized. Sarva Hita Chintakaya Namaha. That is the last concluding pada I can see. Dvandva Tithaya Namaha. Chinna Samshayaya Namaha. Antaryamine Namaha. Antarjyotishe Namaha. Everything of the Ashtottara Namavali, if you are able to connect, you can see Gurudev personifying before you. We follow his footsteps, catch hold of him, take the help of the pledge. Chinna Samshaya, Santushtaya Namaha. Anandaya Namaha. Chinna Samshaya Namaha. So all these things, our Gurudev itself, beautiful ocean of compassion, ocean of knowledge. Why unnecessarily struggle? Like our host Sanjayji often tells that that wheat, difficult wheat, being beautifully prepared as a wheat halwa and fed to us. Even then, we are only looking at the taste of the wheat halwa and swallowing it, but not getting into the essence of it. So anyway, Labante Brahma Nirvanam Vrshaya Kshina Kalmashaha Chinna Dvaitaha. See here, if you again carefully observe in the last pada, I told you Kshina Kalmashaha is in the BMI chart. Where is it? Where is Kshina Kalmashaha in the BMI chart? It is the Vasanas. Right? Chinna Dvaitaha, without the sense of duality, with all doubts cleared. Where is it? When the intellect understands the Sarva Loka Maheshwaram, Madatma, Sarva Bhudatma, what I explained so far. When the intellect understands. So this word, Chinna Dvaitaha, is when the intellect, the quality of the intellect. Yatatmanaha, disciplined mind. And what is the body has to do when the mind is disciplined and when the intellect is knows that the Madatma, Sarva Bhutatma, when there is no duality, what it will do? Sarva Hita Chintakaya Namaha. So beautifully here already the vasanas, the body, the mind and the intellect in this shloka, if we are able to interpret it, what is told for which aspect of our personality, then automatically you can also become a yogi, because yogi is nothing but to have an integrated personality aligned with the supreme consciousness. Sa yogi brahma nirvanam brahma bhuto atigacchati. Sa yogi, which yogi? This yogi, who understands and surrenders his intellect to the higher values, the mind free from agitations of selfish vasanas, and the body totally dedicated to serve for the benefit of all others. Meenakshi ji referred an IIT incident, very beautiful, that also reminds me of one person whom many of us know here, whom we all met in the Uttarkashi trip, is Dinesh. Dinesh ji is also one person from IIT Kanpur, computer science from IIT Kanpur. Dedicated himself to remain in Uttarkashi and later move to Sitabari to educate the children, potential children in that areas, in the regions, on the fundamentals of computer science and engineering, and he has transformed many, many lives. So all of us can do something in this direction, taking inspiration from our own Gurudev or many of our existing Swamis, many of Chinmaya's, our Gurudev's disciples. Enormous amount of inspiration is there around us when we only constantly think about the presence of Gurudev. So that's why I said the gratitude is something when if we keep it in our memory, without Gurudev, what we would have been. This one question can really keep us anchored with the divine principle in us and understand that the rest of it is only the play of Maya, and we too can slowly but surely turn from becoming an objective-minded person to a subjective-minded person. And this is also required in the being successful in the secular world, as told by Gurudev. Hari Om. Sadguru Nath Maharaj ki Jai.
Hari Om. Thank you, Balaji sir. We have another 5 minutes. Jairamji, can you please recite the Nirvan Shat?
Okay, Hari Om. Manobuddhyahankara cittani naham na cha shrotra jihye na cha grana netre na cha vyoma bhumir na tejo na vayu Chidanandarupa Shivoham Shivoham Chidanandarupa Shivoham Shivoham Nacha prana sanyo na vai panchavayu Nava saptadatur Nava panjakosha Navakpani padau Nachopastapayu Chidanandarupa Shivoham शिवोऽहं चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न मे देशरागौ न मे लोभमोहौ मदो नैव मे नैव मात्सर्यभावः न धर्मो न चार्थो न कामो न मोक्षः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न पुण्यं न पापं न सौख्यं न दुःखं न मन्द्रो न तीर्थं न वेदा न यज्ञः अहं भोजनं नैव भोज्यं न भोक्ता चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् न मृत्युर्न शङ्का न मे जातिभेदः पिता नैव मे नैव माता च जन्मः न बन्धुर्न मित्रं गुरुर्नैव शिष्यः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् अहं निर्विकल्पो निराकाररूपो विभुत्याच्च सर्वत्र सर्वेन्द्रियाणां सदा मे समत्वं न वै मुक्तिबन्धः चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् चिदानन्दरूपः शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम् शिवोऽहं शिवोऽहम्
Hari Om. Sukumarji, you can take over the closing prayers.
Okay. We'll have 2 minutes meditation.